means there has to be a training program. It's got to be well defined. It's got to be well delineated. You've got to be able to explain what that kind of training is. How long is it going to take? What do you expect to get from that training? How is the individual going to, or what is the individual going to contribute to after they've had that training? Are they going to, is their contribution going to be in their home country? Is their contribution going to be in the foreign country where they are being trained? You've got to look at all those things. You cannot simply say, this person is a trainee and I'm going to send them abroad and just let them go on that. So you do need to be careful about that. Okay? The mobile ICT employee, clearly, if that person already has a residence permit issued by another EU country, that allows them to move around, and that would allow them to go to France and work as well. Let's see. Okay, continuing on that, we've already discussed the fact that the detachment permits or the talent passport will be issued at the French consulates. That continues over here. The processing will continue for any applications filed prior to November 1. They'll use the same standards. Beyond November 1, you've got to expect delays because there are going to be changes in the process, there are going to be changes in the forms, and that's just par for the course. One has to deal with that. So if you're going to do something now, well, it's already too late. Obviously, we're well past November 1, but you just need to set expectations. And I think that's an important thing that I've learned over the years that I've been doing immigration law. You got to set your expectations right. We do it with you guys when you are our clients, and I think it's important for you to do it with your employees because internally your employees are your clients. And I think you've got to set those expectations right because if you don't, you're the one who's going to be fielding calls and either taking them or avoiding them and either responding to emails or not responding to emails, and you need to be careful about that. Okay. Let's see. Compliance, we come back to that familiar theme over there. Increased inspections, increased compliance-related site visits. It's across the board. I'm not even sure that we need to talk about this specifically differently in terms of any particular country. Clearly, this is something that's just bound to be there, and if you, it's not a question of if there's going to be a compliance audit. It's not a question of if there's going to be a site visit. It's simply a fact of when is it going to happen. Anybody who still labors under the concept of if there is a visit is only fooling themselves, and I think that's not a conversation you want to have with yourself or with your senior management and say, oh, I didn't think this was going to happen, because if you didn't think that was going to happen, you probably should not be sitting in that role, because all of you are experienced professionals. There's no way to say if there's going to be an audit. It's simply a question of when is the audit going to happen. And you need to look at every action that you take from that perspective. If I do A, am I going to be able to clear the audit? If I do B, am I going to be able to clear the audit? Even if you get the application through, that's not the last step. You've got to be able to get your audit cleared, and that's what's eventually going to make your company great and eventually going to make you a good HR professional. Can I clear my audit? And I think that's of invaluable importance to the company and to the individual concerned as well. France actually requires a company to have a legal representative who they can talk to. It's a see, touch, and feel issue where they want to make sure that the individual has the information. They can look at the application. They can compare the records involved when it comes to payroll. Is the person performing the duties and tasks that they are supposed to be performing as stated in that application? Really important. You want to be able to look at that. I'm going to rush a little bit. I've just been told it's 10 minutes, and I'm not sure how many questions are coming in. But I think Jake's monitoring that, so I'm going to rely on Jake to let me know how that plays out. Bottom line, compliance is, again, of course, very important. You've got fines, which can result, employer abroad, a host company in France. You want to be careful about that, because unless you can justify it, you just don't want to be responsible for fines and penalties that come up. Let's see, the next one. Okay, this is compliance related, so I'm going to kind of run through this. I'm going to skip through this one a little bit. I think it suffices to say that compliance is of tremendous importance, and you certainly don't want to be somehow keeping this as a second-tier importance when you're looking at everything. And I think it's sometimes as important to be aware of compliance-related issues, or even more important, as it is to know how to process the application. That's just the first step. The individual goes there, and you've got to be able to comply with what you've said over there. But it's important also to remember that France is requiring a legal representative who they can connect with, who they can contact. And that may not necessarily be your company. It could be your attorney, it could be your visa processing or your visa processor, your facilitator, who may be your contact, as long as they can provide all the information when there is a request for documentation. Again, we keep talking about compliance over here in terms of documentation that you need to keep. I think it's fair to say that anything that you use for processing your visa and for keeping the employee employed should be retained as a copy. Having said that, I just want to make a very general comment here and say, please try to follow a uniform or a consistent policy and a consistent standard. I think that's really important. You shouldn't have a different set of compliance-related documentation for one individual versus another individual. Obviously, emails are a big issue. You don't want to be scrubbing some clean and keeping some for later review. Doesn't help. I think we've all seen that. But you do want to keep all your documentation as best and in as good a shape as possible. Again, if you don't need to keep certain documentation beyond a set number of years, make sure you're getting rid of it for everybody. Don't do it selectively. And sometimes, I guess, it's fair to say that when you folks inherit a role, it's important to go back and take a look and see what your predecessor has done and whether you need to do anything to protect yourself, because your predecessor is gone and you are responsible for that documentation and for that portfolio when you take charge. So you do need to look at that. And sometimes that may involve additional work or additional cleanup, as one may call, but that's something that you have to undertake, because I think otherwise you're asking for trouble. ICT directives for European competitiveness. I think this basically, the changes that they're looking to make, I think it's fair to say, is to ensure uniformity, ensure consistency, ensure people can move around within their work permit area, and make sure that it's all very consistent, and to make it easy for companies to move people, especially as the companies grow their operations and as the companies essentially open operations in different Schengen countries or the EU countries. They want to make sure it's easy to move people around, and that's important. That's the purpose of the EU and the Schengen countries. So you do want to make sure of that. They expect approximately somewhere between 15 to 20,000 people to move around between the different Schengen countries. So that's important. Immigration flexibility is really important. They're, of course, very concerned about security-related issues, and I think that's fair to say that's with very good reason. Questions? Jake? Can a company provide accommodation be part of a salary build-up? Okay, that's a very good question. And I think what's important to remember, and I speak more from a US perspective at this point in time, is you've got to look to see what does the law of that country allow you to do. Is that acceptable? In the United States, yes, it is acceptable as long as it's for a certain kind of visa, as long as it is declared on the petition, and if you're audited, you've got to be able to justify it. That's a compliance-related issue in addition to simply saying, well, you know, I'm paying this person at home. You can have that component, but you do need to look at it in a very clear, specific manner. That's really important. Emerging markets in Africa. Okay, I'm going to give you my 2-second thought on this. Clearly, there are emerging markets in Africa. Clearly, very, very good potential. We do a lot of global immigration with different countries in the African area. Clearly, we have sent, I think we've sent over 100 people to those different countries in that area. It's clearly a growing market. But since it's a growing market, it's probably fairly flexible. Again, important for you to do a CYA, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of compliance and making sure that you can navigate that. Obviously, since it's fairly nascent territory, there's going to be a certain amount of flexibility, but just anticipate issues based on the experience that all of you have in the global environment. I think it's fair to say you should be anticipating problems and addressing them accordingly. Knowledge of certification in German mandatory? No, it's not, because I think, and that's again my take on it, it's not, but it does make it easier to assimilate and culturally and education-wise and employment-wise assimilate. I think Germany is, it's clear to say, and I think it's fair to say, they are an English-speaking country. However, they're not the easiest to mix. I think even when East and West Germany became one, I think you still see remnants of issues between the two sides. So I think it's fair to say, if you have and you know German, clear advantage, no question about it. Do other countries in EU have compliance requirements similar to right? I'm presuming that that's relating to compliance requirements in terms of being legally there, having permission to work over there, having permission to change employers over there, those kind of issues. Absolutely. I think it would be crazy not to think, or to think that a country does not have compliance requirements, especially after we've seen the attacks in Paris about a year ago. Of course they're going to have compliance requirements. It's important to know those. And that's the reason why you have, I think, professionals who advise and guide you in those areas, and you should consult with them. You'd be remiss if you didn't do that. With the Germany EU blue card, can anyone work in France? That's a question that I think I'm going to, it clearly gives you the advantage in Germany. After 2 years in Germany, I think, as I said earlier, you can move around within Germany, and the Germany EU blue card, I believe, actually does allow you to work in France, but I could be wrong on that. Okay. If that is a question that you need a specific answer to, please feel free to email me. We'll be happy to get you an answer within 24 hours. Brief on the arrival, departure, formalities in France, address registration. I think clearly that's something that's already been addressed, in the sense you need a legal representative who can provide all the information. I know Germany has a requirement that you need to get registered over there within 14 days. There are certain exceptions to that, but you do need to get registered, and I would expect that there are arrival, departure formalities in France. And I think you're referring to, obviously not formalities at the airport, but you're referring to address registration, et cetera, which would be local. I would certainly consult your advisor on that. Software installation visa already in practice. What's the duration granted and timelines to get the visa? I'm going to have to get you an answer on that. RUT registration, sorry, A1 certification required for candidates. Okay, this is definitely way outside my timeline over here. I'm going to punt on that. But if whoever sent me this, this question, if you can please forward this to me on email again, promise to get you an answer within 24 hours on that, and we can share that with Zoom so that they can post that for the benefit of the entire audience. APEC card word, same answer as the first one. I can get you the answer on that one. I wish somebody asked me a question about US law, although I'm not speaking on US law. But I can get you an answer on that one, and we can share that with Zoom and basically share it with the entire audience. Okay. Anything else, Jake? Formal notification on minimum salary changes in the UK. I think they are working on that. Clearly, as I've said earlier, some of the salaries have gone up, some of the salaries have come down. I think they're working through the details. You do need to stay tuned on that. And for those of you who would like this information, we do have a newsletter. When I say we, I'm talking about our firm. We have a newsletter that we're happy to share with subscribers. And we send out a global one every week, or every alternate week, and we also send out a US newsletter every 2 weeks. So this is information that we are happy to share with all our subscribers. So please feel free to communicate. For the moment, as we actually progress to changing the name of our firm from Fakhuri Law Group to Fakhuri Global Immigration. For right now, you can use www.employmentimmigration.com. All that you need to do is send me a request to that to subscribe, and we'll be happy to put you on our list of recipients for our US newsletter and our global newsletter. So we'll be happy to do that. Okay?
Rohit, thank you so much. You did a terrific job, and especially standing in for Carmen. We appreciate that very much.
Thank you so much, folks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Jake.